Time now for our international press review here on France 24. Chris Moore is the man in the know today. Chris, obviously the arrest of Radovan Karadzic dominating.
Absolutely, all over the front pages around the world this morning, prompting last-minute changes to a lot of front pages. We can have a look at Republika there. That's a Montenegrin paper. I think Karadzic was born in Montenegro in a stable in 1945, apparently. Let's have a look at the reaction around Europe and the world. El Mundo, the Spanish paper, now they focus on the timing of this whole arrest. Boris Tadic, of course, recently elected at the head of the Serbian government, a more pro-European leader, and of course the issue of war criminals and Kosovo has been a constant stumbling block to Serbian European membership. EU hails Karadzic's arrest as an important step towards Serbian membership there, focusing on the almost suspicious timing of this after his 13 years on the run. There's a great article in Le Figaro, the French paper, Srebrenica, the international community's guilty conscience. This really focusing on the kind of sense of perhaps closure and assuaging a collective sense of guilt that this arrest could have. And Le Figaro is pretty unequivocal in its criticism of the way the international community, it says, stood aside in 1995 and let the Srebrenica massacre happen just as they had in Rwanda just a year earlier. This is a theme that's taken up in the British paper as well, The Guardian, by Ian Traynor. He says, and I quote, "For 13 years, Karadzic's absence has shamed NATO, made a mockery of international justice, embarrassed the international powers and crippled Serbia's ambivalent attempts to integrate with the rest of the democratic world." And for a sort of personal take on this kind of a sense of Western guilt, if you like, there's Marcus Tanner, a journalist writing in The Independent. He's a former correspondent in the former Yugoslavia, and he describes his first meeting with Karadzic in a schoolroom in Sarajevo when the former Yugoslavia was breaking up. And he describes him as a wild man with crazy hair and a cane, kind of wandering around gesticulating at a map and pointing at various areas which he said were Serbian territory. Marcus Tanner says that when he walked out of this meeting, he said to a colleague, "This man is hilarious." And he said the colleague simply broke down in tears, looked him in the eyes and said, "You just don't get it. He's deadly serious. And what's more, he's a madman." The Independent does say, however, this is a momentous arrest on a par with that of Saddam Hussein, but they caution that we should expect Serbs to remain circumspect, especially with the Tadic situation. And we should remember, of course, that Karadzic's general, Ratko Mladic, remains at large.
Still at large, someone obviously helping him to remain at large, and obviously that's the kind of ambivalence
Absolutely.
they're hinting at among Serbian society, that there must be one swathe of the society protecting these people,
It's
which
still
is
a great hero to a lot of Serb
the
nationalists,
chilling thing to think about, given what we're talking about here. OK, constitutional reform.
Constitutional reform, a big day for Nicolas Sarkozy yesterday. Let's look at in Le Figaro again. Congress adopts Sarkozy's Fifth Republic. Constitutional reforms, giving a two-term limit for the president, more power to the parliament. This passed by just one vote yesterday, despite the best efforts of the socialists to scupper it. Now, Ségolène Royal, the former socialist candidate, has blamed her colleague Jacques Lang for obviously being the one vote that allowed this to pass. Let's look in Libération, and now the editorialist there, Laurent Geoffrin, editor of Libération. He says the socialists really shouldn't be getting too het up about all this because it could actually be in their advantage as it gives more power to the opposition. And he accused them really for opposing the reforms just for the sake of opposing the reforms, and tells them to get on with the task of being a credible opposition.
Silver lining in that cloud then for the socialists, perhaps. But talking of constitutions, there's another constitution that's been preoccupying the president's thoughts.
That's right. Sarko in Ireland, of course, yesterday, and we were looking at the Irish press yesterday.
Did he succeed?
They were not at all happy with Sarkozy's visit.
Because they slated him, didn't they?
They did slate him, yeah. Surprise, surprise, the very same paper that slated him yesterday, the Irish Times, is now his best friend, saying all is forgiven, Nicola.
Really?
Yep, but after he relented on this promise of trying to get the Irish to have a second vote, he's now relented on that. So he's now friends with the Irish Times. The Irish Times, however, can't resist giving him a little ribbing. There's a cartoon there you can see in the Irish Times of Sarkozy, Speedy Sarkozy, dressed up as a Tour de France rider.
Great stuff. Chris, thank you very much for that analysis of the international press. You're watching France 24. Stay with us.
Business is brought to you by Dexia, the public finance bank.